Nice. Part two. Ran out of disk space. Okay, questions. Y'all got 20 minutes to ask questions or 20 minutes for me to talk about why I hate the sun.
Can you explain the Archimedes principle and like the BMI benefits and flaws?
Sure. Let's start with the BMI one. So BMI is a really simple ratio of body weight and height. The problem with it is that it doesn't take into account, like it's used to infer like health risk and body fat percentage, even though you literally can't do that with just your height and your weight. So if someone has just weight differences that are mediated through like body composition, so if they have a higher amount of lean mass, muscle mass, even like some people have like genetic predispositions that might be based on, well, their genetics, but also like race and ethnicity that would lead to, like larger overall. So like the American average height is different than the international average height. We're taller on average, right? And sometimes there's differences in um, like muscle mass between different areas in the world. So those things can all impact that weight component without necessarily like affecting the height component, so it doesn't scale the same way. So BMI is flawed because it doesn't really take into account those things, but it is really good in the sense that you can get it very easily because it's only those two numbers and you measure those two things every time that you go to the doctor. You can measure those two things right now in your well, depending if you have like a tape measure or something that would be able to measure that. Literally, you could do the thing that my grandparents did when I was little and stand up against a door frame and use a pencil to mark it, and then get a series of rulers to do that. So it's really easy to get those two numbers. But from a body composition perspective, it's not great. It is really good at looking at like whole trends across a population, kind of like what Lizzie was talking about with epidemiology. You can get BMI and look at it for people across the entire nation. You can gather that data from like medical, so like clinical data from hospitals across the nation much, much easier than it would be to get like DEXA scans and skin fold calipers and those kinds of measurements across an entire population. So it's really good at like trying to create inferences and ask better questions. And then for Archimedes principle, there's all the different body composition methods. Two of them are the hydrostatic weighing, and the other is the bod pod. And the similarities between those two is they look at the displacement of a thing. So hydrostatic weighing is water, and then the bod pod is air or differences in air pressure when you put a thing inside of it. So when you dunk a thing in water, or if you put a thing in a chamber that has air in it, the air pressure will change because it's going to displace that air, or the thing inside of the water will raise the water level by the amount that was displaced. And the amount that's displaced depends on the density of that particular thing, which in this case would be, if we're talking about body composition, it would be a person. So density is a measure of the amount of mass inside a particular volume. The best example is a golf ball versus a tennis, not no, golf ball versus a ping pong ball. The golf ball and the ping pong ball are relatively the same size, but the golf ball is heavier because there's more stuff inside of it. The ping pong ball may be the same, total space or the same total, size, but the inside is essentially empty. There's air on the inside. So fat tissue tends to be much more so like air. It's very empty all throughout versus muscle tissue and other types of lean tissue. So like bone being one of them would be much more dense. You would have a lot inside, proteins, calcium, things of that nature. And so those would, like in a given space, have more mass. So those would displace more water. The Archimedes principle is just the story about that displacement that related to a jeweler who tried to cut corners by creating a crown that was not 100% gold. The king that commissioned it called him out, and then he figured out that it was actually not made out of 100% gold because he weighed an equivalent amount against the crown. So found out that he was trying to BS him. I think that helped. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. I would pay a lot of attention to things that are worth more points. So your true false, I wouldn't spend, inordinate amounts of time on it just because they're only worth 1 point. I made them worth 1 point because you can guess on them. You can guess on multiple choice questions too, but they're worth 2 points. And your chances of guessing correct are not as high. Um, the short answer ones are going to be worth more points, and I usually look for very specific things that I've talked about. So if I'm asking you about how the Industrial Revolution shaped obesity habits or the obesity epidemic that we have today, in your video analysis, I highlighted a few specific things, making sure that you'd mention them if you tried to give me an answer. Like if you just didn't give me anything, I'm not going to give you the answer. But if you tried, then I would have told you that it was the innovations of shelf life, for being able to preserve food, the transportation that allowed food to be moved from one place to the other. Those two things together meant that we could access food for longer periods of time in our own homes, and we could transport it much more easily. Very important, even though it sounds obvious to say that these things together meant that we were eating more because of the convenience of those foods. And all these things together make up the reason why we have, well, you know, mediating the reason that we have a largely overweight society. Big points for big brain answers.
Okay, and I'm just gonna kind of verify and tell me if I'm wrong. So, aerobic versus anaerobic.
Mhm.
So aerobic needs oxygen, right?
Yes.
Like needs more oxygen. So that's the one in resting, and that's the one that's like less productive, but you kind of do it passively. Is that correct?
So
Or fix, yeah, or fix my answer, please.
aerobic is more efficient. It's more efficient because it creates a lot from a little. So it creates a lot of ATP from a little, and it also can access more fuels. So it can access, from a macronutrient perspective, it can access carbs, fats, and proteins, which is I mean, that's a large benefit right there. The problem is that it just takes a lot longer, right? The the anaerobic component is very inefficient. So you're not creating very much energy or ATP. The payoff is that it's quick. So, you can turn around. Oh gosh, how do I use like a non, I don't like insult anyone. Knockoffs are really easy to produce, but you can tell that they are like knockoffs, right? But a good quality item, uses very like efficient processes, and you can kind of see the quality of it. I would say that like knockoffs are really fast, and that kind of is like anaerobic metabolism. If you just need to create something, it's there, but it doesn't last for very long. Whereas
Mhm.
something that's like a quality product, more effort needs to go into it, but it's an overall better product that tends to be more efficient in the long run.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that helped a lot because I think I didn't really know the difference and then was kind of blending the two of them. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, of course. It all blends together because they're not happening exclusively. They're not mutually
Yeah.
exclusive. They're always happening in tandem. It's all just about like what are you telling the body to do? If you're telling the body that it needs to produce a lot of energy very quickly, it just like it can't do it. You're gonna have to scrounge something together, right? It's gonna be
Hmm.
inefficient, but it's gonna get the job done. Whereas if you have the time to like let's say the opposite example would just be like a really long distance run, or for some people, the aerobic activity would just be walking, right? Like you could walk to Monterey. It would not be fun, but you could definitely do that, right? Like energy intense wise, like you sprinting to Monterey, that's not eventually you'll do it, but like walking there would probably be more efficient just because you're able to, maintain that kind of like activity over that longer period of time.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, of
Cool. Thanks.
course. We end up going into more detail on that towards the end of the class too. So I don't want to like go super into it, but that's the stuff.
Yeah.
Really like that stuff.
Plus, also, I'm sure like later it will be more familiar. So, or at least coming from like, I don't have a background in any of this. So it's all like new, you know? So
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
fun.
Oh, morning.
Could you explain where most of the digestion occurs for macro and micronutrients?
Yep, small intestine, everything. Small intestine, 99% of things. That's it. Small intestine.
Oh, and also, what was your memory trick for water soluble versus fat soluble for the vitamins?
That's
Because I
all.
know you had one, but I didn't write it down.
All dogs eat kibble. A, D,
Ah,
fat soluble vitamins. You just have to remember that A, D, E, and K are fat soluble.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah. When y'all take emergency, you usually like throw it into some water, right?
Yeah, that makes sense
Yeah.
because it's
Well,
water soluble.
if you've ever taken vitamin D, it's usually not a liquid. It's technically possible because it would just need to be like an oil. But yeah, usually it's um, like if you take fish oil or something like that. Or that's not a good example. Vitamin D, no, I guess those aren't great examples because they're like mixed in with fat into things. So like with milk, they're mixed into the milk fats. But I was trying to help there. That didn't work out the way that I had planned. But yeah,
Okay, the
vitamin
emergency worked.
perfect.
Yeah.
And then are we gonna have to like draw out the bell-shaped curve and like label it? Okay.
You won't have to draw anything until the last exam, and even then, you don't even have to draw the thing I'm going to ask you to draw. You could just explain it. It's just easier to draw it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else you generally want to know about the exam, like as an exam, not specific questions? I never try to trick you, but I will throw in like, especially with true false questions, I'll throw like a little ringer in there to like really see how much you're paying attention to things. Because I will use things like bolded text to really try to like emphasize what I'm trying to focus or get you to focus on. So that's like a little bit of a hint there that you can carry forward into every single exam.
At the end of class yesterday, you explained two enzymes that break down alcohol, but I was too slow to write them down. Can you explain what they were?
Yeah, sure. Those are ADH, which is alcohol dehydrogenase. I'm putting these in the chat. And ALDH, which is aldehyde dehydrogenase. And then that's 90% of alcohol metabolism. The other 10% uses an enzyme in the liver called CYP2E1. Stands for cytochrome P450 2E1. Alcohol dehydrogenase takes ethanol, which is the stuff we drink, and then turns it into acetaldehyde. That acetaldehyde is a pretty toxic substance in itself, so it needs to be converted. Aldehyde dehydrogenase converts that into acetate, which is basically just like a fatty acid that gets converted into acetyl CoA, which is the thing that is kind of like the central metabolic. How do you say that? it's like the thing. It's like all roads lead to acetyl-CoA, not Rome. Like protein metabolism can lead to it. Carbohydrate metabolism, uh, fat metabolism, it all can lead to acetyl-CoA, which that's the entry point into the Krebs cycle for mitochondrial ATP production, which is otherwise known as oxidative phosphorylation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Y'all got like 4 minutes. So you probably have time for, I mean, technically you have time for 4 questions, but more realistically, like two. Anyone? Bueller
Um, what is the gynoid and android uh
at distribution.
obesity fat patterns and then like the CVD associations?
Yeah, so I like to think Android, Apple, abdomen. So AAA. That is the fat distribution where it tends to kind of center around the center, so the abdomen. That one is typically like associated with a male fat distribution pattern. So males typically put on fat in their midsection first. And then the gynoid is what you would call like the pair fat distribution, and it usually represents itself as like fat in like the hips, kind of like in that upper portion of the lower body. And that's usually associated with female fat distribution patterns. The android or the abdomen related one is the one that's associated with cardiovascular disease because the more adipose tissue or fat tissue that we put on around the midsection, the higher the proportion of visceral adipose tissue we gain, which is the stuff that's deep and can kind of like surround internal organs. And fat as a whole is can create a lot of inflammatory. I guess I should just say inflammation, but they releases a lot of inflammatory factors, and those inflammatory factors, is kind of like the name would suggest, a lot of them like kind of start to break things up. Like if you were uh, setting something ablaze, like you're not going to be like building things up necessarily. So that's why the males actually have a higher risk of cardiovascular disease earlier on, just because of the predisposition to put fat on in the midsection. And that's exacerbated by things like sedentary behavior and poor dietary habits. Uh, yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to mention about that.
Thank you.
Okay, one more question. Y'all know what leptin does? Leptin released by fat cells. Leptin make you feel full. You lose fat, you lose leptin, you feel hungry, which is the same, or you feel not full, which is the same thing as feeling hungry. Ghrelin made by stomach. Ghrelin go grr, make you hungry. Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Usually someone asks that, so I feel like I might as well mention it. Last minute questions. I give you 10 seconds to think of one. Going once, going twice, and all right. Well, your colleagues, because I know that there's like 100 people that are registered in total between two course sections. For five of y'all to show up, that's a lot of responsibility on you guys, huh?
Yeah, who knew?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. you miss all the shots you don't take. So hopefully this was beneficial, but I'll get these recorded. Well, they're recorded, but I'll get them uploaded by the end of the day, and then I'll send an email out with the links, and there will be something in the modules for this exam as well on Canvas.
Well, thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Yep,
Thanks so much.
good one.
Have a nice
Too.
day.